Welcome folks to Dice Chatter. Today we'll be talking about a couple different ways to create your own homebrew D&D monsters, and I'll get a little help today from my fluffy assistant. She doesn't want to look up. This is my cat Jynx. She is lazy, rarely plays with toys, sleeps a lot, is super sneaky, and gets frightened of loud noises. A pretty typical cat. So as you do, you make her into a monster. Now at the top of the video I mentioned there are two ways to make a new monster, or at least two ways that I find are either the easiest, and the latter being the most intricate. So to start, we will look at the easier way to create a custom monster, and that is reskinning already published material. So for example, in the D&D 5th edition monster manual, there is already a cat entry, or maybe I want Jynx to be, well, a sphinx. There is an entry for Gynosphinx as well. This idea is as simple as taking what is already there and putting your new monster into that role. This now reskinned monster has reliable stats and abilities, and the work to create an interesting monster has already been done for you, and your players will most likely be none the wiser. You switched out your house cat for an elegant and terrifying Gynosphinx. This idea is simple and does not take too much effort to resolve, but there is more than one way to skin a cat. The other more complicated method to create a custom monster is, well, starting from scratch. So for the rest of the video we will go into some of the details pertaining to the monster's stats, abilities, actions, and so on. So for starters, you need an idea. And today we have Jynx. We have a description of what she is like, and I will use those ideas to help facilitate the creation process. The first thing that I look at when creating a custom monster is what I want out of it as the game master, and how it will take effect on the game. What kind of encounter will this monster take place in? Does it have a social aspect? Will the players interact with it outside of battle? What level and skill set are my players? These are just a few things to think about to give you a good base idea for this creature. Let's assume there are 4 players at the table, all characters are level 5, and they have played a handful of games at this point. They have a familiarity with the rules and how their characters work. Now I want this Jynx to be implemented in a combat encounter. Maybe the party sets up camp off the road near the entrance to a cave deep in the wilderness. This is when the stealthy feline creature strikes the party and combat begins. This is where we need to figure out what are the stats for the Jynx, what it is capable of, and how to implement it on the tabletop. In the description below there is a link to where you can download the Statblock for the Jynx so you can follow along with me. And also feel free to try it out in your game. For the sake of ease, we'll go down the stat block in order in how I came up with the numbers. Keep in mind when you are making your monster, go in an order that makes sense to you. Also, there is no wrong way to do this, so feel free to experiment and do a little bit of testing before releasing the beast onto the players. Alright, let's jump in and start with the basic stats for the Jynx. Armor, hit points, and speed. For the AC, it comes down to math, and more importantly, the enjoyment for the players at the table. No one likes to roll a 13 on your d20, add your modifiers, and still miss a bad guy. It can be deflating to know your odds to hit a creature are less than 50%. So I keep this in mind for the Jynx. It has an armor class of 14, has no extra armor or abilities to increase it. Its AC is solely based on its dexterity, like a lot of player character stats. Most players around level 5 have a plus 7 to hit, so if I roll a 7 or higher on the die, which is a 70% chance, the players can make contact with the monster. That number may seem high to you, but D&D is a dice game. Sometimes the players will take down your baddie in 1 round, or, well, 7. For the hit points, I have no major trick I do here. I generally compare it to other monsters of a similar caliber. A lot of the beasts in the monster manual and other resources had health similar to what I have used here for the strength of the monster I am creating. But I will say that hit points are really just there to extend combat, so if your 4 players hit 70% of the time, and just to make the math easy, deal out an average 10 damage on a hit, you are looking at an average of 3 rounds of combat with this creature. Now add in another Jynx or some other feline allies, and this combat can go from simple to extreme. And finally, for the speed, I didn't want it to be a 30-foot range, which is pretty standard movement. I wanted this feline monster to be quick and agile, so I gave it a slight speed boost. Now we move on to the complicated part of monster creation, and that is the ability scores of the creature. Ability scores generally reflect all other stat bonuses or debuffs your creature will have. Do you want a high stealth? Give it a good dex score and proficiency in the skill. What about a solid passive perception? Focus on wisdom and give it proficiency as well. There's no perfect way to do this. Experiment, mess around, and feel free to reference similar monsters to at least give you a basic idea of what is appropriate. Looking at the Jynx ability scores, we focused on dexterity for a good stealth and a little boost to the armor class. I put a dip in the intelligence because this creature is a beast, and beasts just want to eat and reproduce. They don't have the capabilities of solving intricate math problems, or, create custom D&D monsters. All of the other ability scores follow similar patterns to give an agile and perceptive creature, with not much focus on any social aspects. Now we will move down onto the skills, resistances, vulnerabilities, and other miscellaneous attributes, and the ever-present challenge rating. Skills were actually very easy to choose. Think of a few your creature may or may not be good at, and represent that in the stat block. The Jynx has a high dexterity and a proficiency in stealth, and a similar situation with perception as well. I imagine the Jynx quietly moving through the brush, waiting to pounce on unexpected prey. Looking through the other skills, nothing really popped out to me as something the Jynx would be proficient in, so I gave the creature only 2 proficiencies. This train of thought also went along with the immunities, resistances, and vulnerabilities. I didn't think this beast would be resistant to non-magical weapons or immune to petrification. This is up to the creator and the type of creature they are making. An ethereal creature may be resistant to non-magical attacks and a number of elements. A floating creature may be immune to being knocked prone. If you want to add more detail to the creature in this way, don't hesitate to make it more interesting. And we will take a minute to talk about challenge rating. Challenge rating is a good tool to give you a basic representation of how difficult or easy a monster is to a party of 4. And in my humble opinion, that's really about it. Do not get hung up on deciding what the challenge rating of your monster should be and how much experience this creature should be given out if defeated. Create an interesting monster first, and then go back and deal with its challenge rating. Honestly, you could even skip this step. The challenge rating number is a nice tool for dungeon masters, but it is not a perfect science. Don't waste effort on this step and move on to the juicy part of the monster, which, in my opinion, is the abilities and actions of the creature. I decided to give the Jynx the Keen Smell Pounce and the Sneak Attack ability because I want my players to get a taste of their own medicine. For abilities, I tend to steal already implemented ideas found with various other monsters, and sometimes I'll sprinkle in a player character ability so the players at the table feel cheated. Not in a bad way, of course. Overall, abilities and actions is where the creativity really seeps in. This is the section where I personally like to take the most time and flesh out, especially if I'm creating a custom big bad evil guy with crazy spells and powers. This section is hard to offer exact advice because every creator thinks differently, but what I will offer is to think about how this monster will change the landscape of a battle if they are operating at peak performance. For example, the Jynx is designed to be a peak predator and may travel in a small pack. If the Jynx is able to get off the pounce ability while it's being a sneak attack and it's happening in a surprise round, your players may pee a little in their pantaloons. Now, the odds of this happening in game are not the greatest, but if you look at your monsters at the strongest they can possibly be, you can really get a good idea of what they are capable of. For the Jynx here, we can also see I have given the monster the multi-attack option with a nasty bite and a big ol' claw attack. The +7 to hit is pretty decent against a bunch of level 5 characters, and the damage output is fair. Now, you can make the damage dice you roll as complicated as you want, but I just like to keep it simple. I have too much at the table to think about anyways. I don't want to add mountains of dice combinations to that as well. And honestly, that is it. This is the D&D monster I made based off my cat. Now, there are a number of other things we could have dove into about making your own custom monster, like spell casting, layer actions, and so on, but I didn't want to make a 45-minute video on the intricacies of monster creation. If there's an audience for that, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to create an endgame monster with you all. Please let me and other folks know down below if there are any other ideas that would be great for your own monster creation and what fun creatures and NPCs you have come up with yourself. Until next time, Thank you all for watching, and of course, happy gaming.